Hi, I'm Miten Soni. I just graduated with a degree in cinema, and I feel it is my duty to impart my vast film knowledge onto you. This is Miten on Movies. Starring film legends Humphrey Bogart and Ingmar Bergman, Casablanca is considered to be the best of Hollywood's golden age. What's interesting though about this 1942 Michael Curtis directed picture is it was originally a political thriller entitled The White House, but the script went through many channels, eventually be titled Casablanca and getting all up. But before we dive deep into the details, let's look a little bit at the history behind this film. You see, Casablanca was made at the time where Hollywood studios were cranking out dozens and dozens of pictures a year, and no one knew at the time that Casablanca was going to stand out above the rest. But the film did, winning numerous Academy Awards, and really stood out when looking back over the history of cinema. World-renowned film critic Gene Siskel famously said of Casablanca, "Who gives a f***? I'm dying of cancer." Actually, the initial title change of Casablanca was very indicative of the many writing changes to come. The ending was being constantly rewritten as the filming progressed. There were actually 87 filmed endings that did not make it into the final cut of the film, including one where a curiously Austrian robot came back in time from the future to stop Victor and Isla from leaving. This idea was later reappropriated by filmmaker James Cameron for his hit film True Lies, starring Tom Arnold Schwarzenegger. The filmmakers finally decided upon the now iconic ending by writing all of their ideas into a hat and picking one at random. Ingrid Bergman was so upset with the selected ending that she vowed to never act in film again, and did until she came out of retirement for the 1997 film Good Burger. She was so senile at the time that she misread the title of the script, thinking it said Good Bergman, and thought it was a documentary about her life instead of a vehicle for two rising Nickelodeon stars. She was then replaced by Abe Vigoda, who you may know from the famous 1970s sitcom Barney Miller. Probably the most iconic thing that Casablanca is known for is the many famous lines of dialogue within the film. Let's take a look at some, shall we?
I didn't kill my wife! I don't care!
Interesting about the famous Bogart saying, "We'll always have Paris," is that the line was originally, "We'll always have Ferris," as Ferris Bueller's Day Off is Humphrey Bogart's favorite film. However, they couldn't get the rights to name drop that film, so the line was later changed in ADR. Another bit of dialogue trivia, the line "Here's looking at you, kid" was actually not a line at all, but was a stage direction in the script, as Humphrey Bogart had a lazy eye and never knew where to look. Although ironically, due to his lazy eye, he thought it was a piece of dialogue and said it out loud in the film. Although some film historians argue that the line was actually Bogey giving Bergman a copy of his favorite book, Looking at You. Now arguably the most famous line from Casablanca is "Play it again, Sam." But what you may not know is that is actually misquoted. The actual line from the film is,
"Listen, Blackie, you have one job to do. Now play the goddamn piano."
The character of Sam is actually well known for being one of the first major roles an African American had in a Hollywood motion picture, mainly due to the fact that at this point, no white person had learned how to play the piano. Casablanca is also famous for being the first film to feature product placement. Vienna sausages sponsored the film, and anytime the word Vienna is said, you can spot a sausage on screen. Casablanca was controversially colorized in the 1980s during Ted Turner's famous campaign against the colorblind. Artists painstakingly had to go through each frame with crayon, which at the time were not non-toxic, and they eventually took Ted Turner to court in order to pay for the operations due to their strange growths. Let's analyze the scene, shall we? In the iconic finale to the film, the fog effect at the airport was actually produced by all the cigarettes that Humphrey Bogart had smoked during the film. The cinematographer spotted the smoke and loved how it looked on camera, and then got a bunch of PAs to wave folders just out of frame to make sure the smoke wafted in the right direction, just to show that some iconic moments in film happen on the fly. Bogart wears his iconic hat at the end of the film because at a party the night before, the crew found him passed out drunk and shaved his head to look like a penis. Arguably the most famous shot at the end of the film, the final crane shot, was actually shot before cranes were invented. So they simply attached a balloon to a camera and let it go up. They then had an archer shoot an arrow, popping the balloon, and then caught the camera in a basket full of towels. Movie magic, folks. Cloud Rain speaks his famous catchphrase at the end of this scene, "Round up the usual suspects." What many do not know is there actually is a deleted scene where he does in fact round up the usual suspects. Well, I hope you learned a little something about one of the greatest pictures from the 1940s. If you haven't seen Casablanca, I highly recommend it. Join us next week on Miten on Movies when we'll be discussing the Akira Kurosawa classic Rashomon, or in its original pronunciation, Rashomon! Shamon Lee! I'm Miten Soni, and we'll see you next time.